And welcome back to the Responsibly Armed Citizen Show. We have a fun show for everybody today. In studio with me is Senior Tim, as always. Tim, how are you doing today?
Fantabulous.
Fantabulous. And we have a guest today, Tim, who's already made us laugh and crack and have a good time. Mr. Zach, how are you doing today?
Good. How are y'all?
Fantastic. All right. So, topics for today. We this past week had a conversation with some people, and there's a lot of legislation that's running around. There's a lot of concerns about firearm ownership, right? There's a lot of things about where the government's going to come after our guns or whatever other things that are out there. And look, it's not always about the firearm. Right. There are so many other avenues. There's so many other skill sets. There's so much more out there than just a firearm, just a gun. So I think that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to really dive into, hey, look, what does that look like? What does it look like for, somebody who, has, for whatever reason, right, that they're choosing not to have a gun, or they have a gun and, they're resting on this is the thing that I'm going to use without considering, right, everything else, without considering the other alternatives. So I really think that, we should, dive into that a little bit and discuss, those alternative things, those things that really a responsibly armed citizen should be doing. So before we jump into that, Mr. Zach, how are you? How are you doing? It's been quite a while since we had last seen you, talked to you. So tell us a little bit about what's going on in your world.
Yeah, doing good. We just got back from Colorado from Girl and a Gun National Conference, teaching out there, and taught shotgun, home defense shotgun kind of stuff, and also, which was called Rules of the Gauge. And then also taught a music and shooting class, and something I've been working on for a couple years. And it combines two of my passions in life, and it's really neat stuff. It was a lot of fun, and that
awesome.
one was called Controlling the Chaos. But other than that, farming, cows doing good, goats doing good. Everybody.
So the reason why we brought Zach is for so we get a little bit of the farming background, a little bit of the other perspective, the homesteading thing. I think that'll go well with today's topic. So guys, let's dive into it. So first things first, we're constantly being asked, hey, how can we view your previous shows? How can we reach out to you guys, talk to you? So you can do that a few different ways. Take a look at the WSIC News YouTube. They carry a lot of our previous shows, our past episodes, things like that. So you can definitely reach out to us and see some of our previous stuff there. You can also reach out to us via phone or through email. So that phone number is 336-422-6859. So that's 336-422-6859. And you can also reach out to us via email at rac@apachenc.com. That's rac@apachenc.com. Hey, and don't forget to check out the new WSIC News app that's out. So you can pull up a lot of previous shows. You can check out some current shows, stuff like that, right on the app. So you may not necessarily be in the listening area, but you can still check out some cool stuff that's out there. So, self-defense, right? It's not a gun ideas, things that do not have to do with handgun, and I really think that this topic can be chunked into different segments, right? Different places. So, there's definitely a difference between self-defense, things of that nature, self-defense ideas when it comes to your home, workplace, motor vehicle, right? And versus things that are in public, right? The way that you approach things, the way that you go about viewing things, your situational awareness, things like that. So let's start with home first. So what are different things? And Tim and I, we've touched on this, here previously, not I guess a couple of shows ago, that there are things that different ideas that you can put in place as far as stuff that you can do at the home, right? There are different barriers. There's different ideas there. So what are some things that a responsible citizen should look at when it comes to having some self-defense ideas, having some self-defense stuff that does not include a firearm at your home?
Most conversations that I have with people, they oftentimes miss the mark by suggesting that their home defense plan is a gun,
right,
or it's a dog, or it's a locked door,
Yep.
or I have a Ring doorbell, or I have lights in my front yard, or I just live in a good neighborhood. None of these are home defense plans. These aren't strategies. Where I think a lot of people miss the mark is they're relying on a gun to defend themselves in their home, but they don't have enough preventative measures put in place to buy them enough time to access that firearm should they have to use it. Right. So these are the same people that don't lock their doors at night because they live in a good neighborhood, but they have a gun in a safe that's, across the bedroom or something along those lines. Even if you have a gun beside your bed and you don't have locks on your doors, that's not buying you enough time. Right. There's a lot of things that go into home defense, and it starts from the outside and works its way in.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't have good lighting, having good lighting around the outside, the exterior of your homes, having good locks on your doors, having an alarm system. People think that dogs account for an alarm system. No, they don't. They're not reliable. They're not the ones calling 911. Right. They're not calling any emergency services. They're just there, and maybe they're going to bark or maybe they won't. Who knows? Dogs are not a self-defense plan. Making sure that your windows stay locked. There's a ton of things that go into home defense before you even start talking about a gun.
Right. Really, those are all physical things, right? That's stuff that you can buy. But if you don't have the discipline to actually, put these things in place, install these things correctly, and actually use these things, I can't tell you how many times. So I've installed security systems for people in the past, right? Both the alarm panels, and I've installed, camera systems, stuff like that. But you can have the best security system in the world. You can have the best camera system in the world. But if you don't use this stuff, if you don't maintenance this stuff, then you're going to have problems. It's going to fail when you need it most. But even before that, right? Even before, these security systems, these cameras, these things, things of that nature, you have to have the discipline to say, hey, I'm going to spend the money. I'm going to have this stuff, or I bought a house that has this stuff, and I'm going to be disciplined enough to use it on the regular, or put things in place that help, alleviate some of that burden from you. We're in a world with smart devices. We have locks, right? We have smart padlocks and things like that, smart deadbolts. You can set those up to where they will automatically lock. Many of them, I should say. Many of them, you can set them up to where they'll automatically lock once, a certain amount of, time has left. So if you're, at your home, you're doing some running around, whatever it is, and, you accidentally forget to, turn around and lock the door behind you, well, it'll do it for you. Now, that's not an excuse to to not make sure to, just rely on technology, because, things can fail. But that is just another way, another avenue that you can help, alleviate some of the pain points of that.
Right.
And then there are other preventative measures that are out there, putting, bars and doors, low tech stuff, just a dowel rod, right? Sliding glass doors, throw a dowel rod down, just something to help minimize, help mitigate some of the chance that somebody's going to enter, when you're not, when you don't want them to. Right. It's not a catch-all, but it's definitely a way to help, slow things down. Yeah, so the other stuff that we really start thinking about, when we start getting into the home, is going to be skill sets, right? There are other different skill sets that you should really start thinking about when you're not thinking about the home. When you start talking about stuff that's outside of the home, we start getting into a completely different realm of working in and around vehicles, family members, stuff like that. Let's touch base on that a little bit when we come back from the break. You're listening to the Responsibly Armed Citizen Show. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Responsibly Armed Citizen Show. My name is Tim Kelly. With me, I have Frank Horvath and a guest, Zach Cox, and we have been talking about everything regarding the Responsibly Armed Citizen. Specifically, we have been talking about self-defense in and around the home, and stuff that just doesn't involve firearms. And after the last break, we were talking about discipline and the having the mindset to really to prepare yourself for a home invasion. And the one thing I really want to say about that, and I'll pass this over to Zach because Zach really wants to talk about it. The first thing you need to do when there is a problem is admit that a problem may exist, right? And I think that's where a lot of people miss the mark as well. Is they convince themselves that they live in a good neighborhood and they're never going to have a problem of a break-in or anything like that. When I can personally tell you, just outside of the scope of all of the research that we have to do and the work that we're in, just from a personal standpoint, how many instances where someone lived in a good neighborhood and someone ended up in their home and they weren't invited, right? We have a family member that ended up with coming home from just doing some grocery store shopping, and they walked in because they left their house unlocked, right? Mm-hmm. And they went to stow some stuff in a closet or something like that, like a jacket, mm-hmm. and there was a dude hiding in the closet.
Yeah.
Just a random dude, and he was lost. But I mean, he could have meant them harm.
Yeah, and that's the crazy part is it doesn't always have to be someone that's looking to do harm, right? It could be somebody who's drunk or somebody who has some sort of mental something going on or whatever it is, right? It could be a kid. It could be any number of things that there's no real the hard fast rule that says it's going to be someone who's trying to do harm. It could be any number of things, right? And a little bit of discipline on your part can help mitigate a lot of these issues.
Sure. Zach, you were talking about mindset a minute ago. Go for it, man.
Yeah, I think a big part of it, one of the first steps is a mindset change. Changing your mind and thinking like a criminal, thinking like a home invader, thinking like all this stuff, but also thinking like a family member and like a protector of loved ones and there's 100 different scenarios and 100,000 different ways to do this. But the mindset change of thinking outside the box, thinking differently, of even just getting bushes around windows and making it a little more difficult, or trees or privacy fences, or, hey, it's Christmas time whenever in December 25th, which is always Christmas, I guess. No, my mind went blank for a second, which happens a lot. But no, during Christmas time, don't leave your boxes of like, you got a brand new TV or something like that on the street. It's just changing your mind of maybe rip it up, put it in a bag, and then throw it in the trash can or something like that. But I think a big part of it is the mindset change at home, and home defense can also be maybe not always something criminal. It could be you lost your job, and defending your home and yourself could be food storage. It could be growing a garden. There are different ways to defend yourself and your loved ones, defending them from hard times. That's a big one, the way our world is right now. And growing a garden and learning the old ways of canning and preserving food is so important. There's 1,000 things.
So let's get into that a little bit. So let's talk about some specific things that people can do, right? So we talked a little bit about barriers, talking about putting bushes and things like that up around homes. The security systems, right? We talked about installing those and using those. The biggest problem that I have with a lot of these things, right? The stuff that you can go and buy, is just like we said in the last segment, is people aren't disciplined enough to actually buy these things and use these things appropriately, right? Or they put too much stock, they put too much faith in these things.
Depending solely on that.
They're depending solely on that, right? And the problem with that is there's a false sense of security, right? I cannot tell you how many times I've spoken with somebody and about just personal self-defense, preparedness, or a spouse of somebody who's really bought into self-defense and things like that, right? That's usually where you start getting a little bit of resistance. And it's, we have an alarm system. I don't see why this is necessary. Or we have cameras. I'm fine. No, the cameras are going to record your death. They're not going to prevent it necessarily. Right? It could be a mitigant, right? It could be a way of saying, hey, I'm recording what you're doing. But far too often people get sucked into that mentality, whether it be with a security camera, with a phone, or something like that, that it causes more harm than good.
Now, how many times do we watch these videos of home invasions of somebody just covering their face before they start donkey kicking their door in?
Yeah.
Right, like in broad daylight, you know, or the folks that will show up to your door pretending to be a salesman of some kind,
Yep.
or maybe they're pretending like they run out of gas and they need some help or something along those lines. So, just for a second, something just popped up in my head a minute ago was how we raise our kids within our home defense plans. And you know, one of the things our children know is it doesn't matter who comes to the door. It does not matter if it's someone you know, if it's a friend, if it's a family member. It does not matter. You are not responsible for opening and unlocking the doors unless myself or your mother give you permission. Otherwise, you do not answer the door.
Right.
If it's a firefighter, if it's a cop, it does not matter who it is. You do not open up that door without letting one of us know. Now, we run through all types of different scenarios and stuff, but where they start to learn and figure things out for themselves. But they're really good about it. They kind of play a game with it. You know, like they'll be outside in the yard playing or something like that. And you know how much traffic we get around our house. I mean, the range is right in front of our home. So they'll have somebody pull down the driveway and into the parking lot across the street, and they come inside. They'll come inside because somebody pulled in, you know, and some things like that, communicating with your family and trying to have these plans put in place, and then having the mindset to hold yourself to those standards and not waving it off like, oh, it's nothing, no big deal. Right?
And really, like, again, you just said that, like having a plan, right, and communicating that effectively. You know, it needs the whole family unit really needs to buy into it. Or you know, and if the whole family unit isn't bought into it, then you know you'll need to work hard towards working towards that goal. Right? You need to figure out what works best for everyone. Because if you're really bought into it, but the rest of the family isn't necessarily bought into it, or there's lapses in that, then you might as well not be doing anything, right? Because there's going to be holes there.
And I agree. These are all like pieces of the puzzle. There are so many pieces to this puzzle that, okay, just having bushes, just having a dog, that's not the end all be all. That's why in our at Apache, our safety briefs and our emergency plans, we have an emergency procedure plan.
And redundancies.
Yes, and we leave no single point of failure. It's the same thing in home defense, self-defense, in all realms of having the options, having the tools, having the skills to be able to do that is so important. Another one is community. Right. And having the community of maybe you have a neighbor, maybe you have a 75, 80-year-old woman that lives next door and just got nothing better to do than watch TV and watch her house. Okay, talk to her. Have a conversation with her, and you guys protect each other. There's so many things.
My next door neighbor, I just had a conversation with her the other day. We're constantly looking out for each other, right? So, you know, if I go on a trip, you know, I'll text her husband or her and say, "Hey guys, I'm going for a trip," whatever it may be, and vice versa. They do the same thing to us. "Hey guys, we're going to be out of town for X amount of days or X amount of time, whatever it is. Just giving you a heads up." Which is fantastic, because you're right. That community piece, that it's really helpful. It's really beneficial, right? So it makes it easier. Right? It makes it so that you're not alone in your castle, right? You have other people that you can help. People that you trust anyway, that you can help. Push back a little bit on, or if you need a little bit of help or need some guidance or something like that. Just like what we're doing here at Apache, right? Yeah. If somebody is listening, or like, "Hey, I have a question about it. I've thought about this, or in my personal home, my personal experience, where the way I am, the way I work, the way I go about living my life. What if?" Reach out to us. We'd love to talk with you. That's RAC@ApacheNC.com, RAC@ApacheNC.com, or 336-422-5859, 336-422-58. Or excuse me, 6859. A little bit of dyslexia going on there. So yeah, these are all really great things. Now, what about? And we only got a couple minutes, but what about like in public? Right. So, we've talked a lot about at home. We talked about, our group and, our family units, stuff like that. But, what is the biggest piece that you see missing out in public when in, this modern digital age, I should say, when, people are out and about and just going about their lives?
Getting their head out of their phone, situational awareness.
There we go.
I mean, you just said it.
Just
Your
serve
face
that for
out of
you.
your phone. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I think as far as tools go, the one thing that I think is missing is probably medical. And I know this doesn't really dive into self-defense, but it very well might too.
skill sets, right?
Having the ability to apply a tourniquet where it's needed, or having the pressure bandages and the tools easily accessible to you, those are things that I think are really missing in our community, and people don't take it upon themselves to to carry that type of stuff around.
And it's not always a gunfight or anything like that. It could be a car wreck. It could be kid fell off a slide, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, keep going.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I mean, my wife carries a trauma kit and a boo-boo kit when she takes the kids to the park. We have it on us whenever we go to a ball game.
Mm-hmm.
We have that gear on us everywhere we go. I've got it on the plane flight.
Mm-hmm.
I've always got some type of trauma kit near me.
Yep.
Somewhere.
Cool. I mean,
the next thing, as far as for self-defense, I'd say it'd be OC. That'd be the next thing.
yeah, things like trauma kits and stuff like that. If nothing else, a tourniquet, right? Because I mean, that's going to be the easiest thing to conceal on your person, the easiest thing to maintain on your person, and really one of the easiest things to be trained on. I mean, It's so quick and easy. I mean, you can knock it out in 10-15 minute session. As far as proper application and things like that. It's not rocket science, but the benefits of knowing how to properly use a tourniquet, or the benefits of properly knowing a little bit of medical, the benefits of being able to properly administer OC spray or some sort of deterrent like that.
OC is pepper spray for anybody wondering.
Pepper spray is instrumental.
I fell off course there. I don't think OC spray would come next in priorities. How do I say this? The ability to speak eloquently in a social environment and talk your way out of certain situations.
De-escalation.
Yeah,
as you guys have heard a million times, I am a big proponent of de-escalation, big proponent of using your voice effectively. Something I'm working on every day. You're listening to the Responsible Armed Citizen Show. We'll be right back for the break. Welcome back to the Responsibly Armed Citizen Show. My name is Tim Kelly. With me, I have Frank Horvath and Zach Cox. And we have been talking about everything regarding the Responsibly Armed Citizen. More specifically, talking about stuff that has to do with no guns. And before we were talking about home defense strategies and different mindsets, and that developed into outside the home and different skills that you need to have in place in order to navigate certain situations. And one of the things that really, just dawned on me before we got into OC spray, I really wanted to talk about de-escalation techniques and be able to talk yourself out of certain issues, certain problems. And then it dawned on me, our friend John Willis from Gunset up in Ohio just took an ECQC class, that's Extreme Close Quarters Combatives class, with ShivWorks, Craig Douglas of ShivWorks. And that class was in Ohio, I believe. But we'll let John tell you, because we have John on the show now. So welcome, John. Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me, fellas.
Thanks, man. Where was this class at? Was it in Ohio?
Yeah, it was in Wilmington, Ohio, about an hour away from where I am in Dayton.
That's awesome, man. Craig takes these classes all over the country. Sometimes he's in Hawaii. He's literally all over the country teaching this ECQC class. So tell us a little bit about what you learned in that course.
So ECQC, Extreme Close Quarters Concepts, is a vital class in especially to your topic at hand today, in managing contacts from 0 to 5 feet. And a major part of that class is managing unknown contacts. So this class manages everything from the verbal contact, a person contacting you who, where it may be just something verbal, it may be just an unknown, relatively innocuous contact that may be relatively benign or non-threatening, to something that could be quite threatening or concerning to you. It could be it could escalate to physical violence of hands or weapons or otherwise. And so this class covers the gamut of all of those contacts, and a huge focus of that is the verbal and mental concepts of how to keep these situations from escalating. And that's in a lot of ways, that's some of the hardest things for folks to grasp. And it's an interesting thing how much of a mental game it can be, just how your language, how your interactions with other folks when you're out and about in the world come into play in keeping yourself and your loved ones safe when you're out in the world.
Awesome, man. So, for our viewers, what would you say, and our listeners, what would you say is your biggest takeaway from this class?
My biggest takeaway, and it's funny, before you all reached out to me, I was thinking about it. My biggest takeaway from my class, my biggest personal achievement in the class, there is an extraordinary amount of hands-on physical combative work in the class. My biggest win in the class was a contact that I had that could have escalated to serious violence, where a person in the scenario accosted me and accused me of a relative of a quite serious offensive thing to him and his family. And I was able to use the skills and techniques to the way I interacted with this person verbally in maintaining my position, in speaking to them in a calm and clear, not stern but respectful manner. I was able to maintain control of the situation, not escalate it, not be disrespectful or aggressive back to the person. I was able to calm the situation, and it didn't escalate to violence. It showed that, although I was prepared for that situation, it showed that it didn't need to go there. Even though I'm an armed person and I'm prepared for that conflict, it illustrates that it doesn't have to be that, and you can use these techniques to avoid that, and you want to avoid that, and it's a wonderful thing. I'm so thankful for the experience.
Yeah, and John, you told me about that story and how the demeanor just completely changed and shifted, and the whole entire conversation that was escalating because you were calm and in control of your own mind and self. It was like a switch was flipped, and they were like, "Wait a second," and the demeanor had just suddenly changed. And I remember you talking about that last night when we had spoke, and that's a neat thing.
It was interesting because the guy even I had wrestled and had some fights with this guy in the class previous. And when the guy was given his scenario, he even said, he was like, I really wanted to hit him for what we were kind of engaging about. He said, I really wanted to hit him for this. And the way I had approached him, his shoulders dropped, and he was like, I just couldn't do it. He just couldn't. He didn't have the fight in him anymore. And that's because of the way I approached him. And I'm like, hey man, I get where you're coming from, and I understand your position. Let's get the police here and let's sort this out. I understand where you're coming from, man. I totally get it. And it worked out, and it didn't have to be violent. And the feedback from Craig Douglas, who's the authority on these matters, from his the way he critiqued it, he said, John, I love the way it looked and I love the way it sounded. And here's a guy who'd been in violent conflict of a close quarters nature a huge amount of time.
Pretty much his entire adult life.
Right.
Yeah, his entire adult life, he'd been in close quarters violent conflict. And when he said that told me I was doing it right. For someone like that to say it sounded right and it looked right, that told me the way I'm communicating is healthy and sound, And that was a huge win for me. And it tells me to tell other people, really think about how you're talking to other people and how you look and sound, and you can avoid a huge amount of potential conflict. And that's the most important thing that we're trying to do, is to keep ourselves and our family and our loved ones safe.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a quick definition of what it means to be a responsibly armed citizen, I would say that would be the ultimate win right there, right? Being able to talk your way out of having to use a gun, even though you have the tool on you and you're very proficient in the use of it, or you have OC and you're very proficient in the use of it, or a knife or whatever tool, nunchucks, it doesn't matter. Like
Nunchucks.
If you can talk your way out of having to use that is the skill to have.
Absolutely.
Like that is 100% the most productive skill to have.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really coupled with our medical and those alternative skill sets, but really being able to like I said, talk your way out of a situation, de-escalate, right? Not having to go to those other tools. I mean, it's absolutely worth. I mean, speaking from personal experience, it's absolutely the way to go.
Yeah,
you if you don't have to use those tools, don't. But John, what are the nuggets of wisdom do you have from us? What are some of those just those things? What's the thing that you really walked away from ECQC with?
So really, it was to really dive into the further understanding of verbal skills and remember, especially from the managing unknown contacts. Think of that first thing you say if someone does approach you. And some of us had talked about that when we were in Texas at TACCON a few weeks ago. Think about that first thing you say. Is it an invitation for someone to get closer to you, or is it a suggestion that they do keep their distance? If someone is coming towards you, are you saying something like, "Can I help you?" which is an invitation for them to come closer to you, or, "Hey, can you hang back there? Could you stay back there a little bit?" Are you suggesting that they come closer to you, or are you telling them to stay back away from you? The way you open the line of communication very much dictates how it's going to go for you as far as proximity goes. That was kind of an interesting thing for me because I think about how I say when people approach me, and that's an important thing to think about, how you open that line of communication. Also, for me, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, that and, how you're maintaining that rapport, right, with that other person, on the fly rapport, building something up or maintaining that or, communicating to talk about that. Go ahead, John.
Yeah. It also stressed for me the importance of the intermediate defensive tools, your daily carry defensive flashlight and your spray. Those intermediate tools are vital. Having some level of hand skills, but also having those intermediate tools between voice and gun is vitally important. It stresses the importance because once it goes to hands, you really have to have a lot of tools between voice and gun.
For sure.
And it really stresses the importance of that because most people don't have a significant amount of fighting skills if it does escalate to that. And just because you're in a fight doesn't mean it's gun time.
Right.
Or just because you're losing a fight doesn't mean it's gun time. And a lot of people think that might be the case, and it's really not.
Yeah, that's a really good point, John. We only have a couple minutes left. I probably should have done this in the beginning. Let's tell everybody who you are. I mean, John, you've been doing the training thing for quite some time now. Taken many different classes and teach a lot of different classes yourself. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and
briefly, 60 seconds.
Yeah, give us a 60-second rundown.
So I'm Jonathan Willis. I'm with Gunset Training Group up in Dayton, Ohio. I'm the lead shotgun instructor there, and I'm most proud of my work with Real World Trauma. I travel around and teach a class called Real World Trauma, helping folks to better understand their management of trauma injuries and medical emergencies in the day-to-day context of their world.
Fantastic. Thank you, John. One more thing before we let you go. Who needs this type of training? Who needs intermediate force training?
Everyone.
Everyone.
You heard
I could have bet on that.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, there you have it, folks. Everyone needs intermediate force training. And when we come back from our next break, I'm going to tell you how you can get it here locally. But thank you, John. We really appreciate having you on the show and taking the time to be with us, man. Look forward to having you back down. You're going to be back down in like November, right?
November 9th at Apache Solutions.
November 9th at Apache Solutions. He's going to be teaching his real-world trauma class here. So get your medical training done with John Willis from Gunset.
Right. Don't miss it. It is a fantastic course.
All right, guys. We will be back after this break.
What are we talking about now?
And welcome back to the Responsibly Armed Citizen Show. The studio is falling apart. Zach, we are in the process of talking about all things responsibly armed citizens should know about self-defense.
He forgot where he was.
He forgot where he was.
Yeah.
So we were talking about self-defense. We're talking about things around the home, things away from the home. We talked about barriers and different skill sets. The last segment we had John Willis of Gunset Training. He just recently took ECQC with Craig Douglas and ShivWorks. And, really gave us an awesome, just quick overview of that class and, how to handle some of those intermediate threats and how to handle some of those intermediate tools, I should say. And then talking a little bit about de-escalation and things like that. So, I really think, all of this really boils down to, just like what John had said, training. Everyone needs this kind of stuff. Go out and get some training, right? So coming up, like you said, the November 9th for John's class is coming down at Apache. The Real World Trauma course, fantastic class. I've taken it twice. I love it. You always learn something useful in that course, and the way that he delivers that information. It is literally for the average Joe. Yeah. Right. It's for people who have no idea, no background, maybe not, in some cases, may not even be interested in this kind of stuff. John has a way of really bringing them into the fold. Another course that's coming up here soon, May 25th, end of the month, is Dan Brady, one of our guys, right? He's also going to be Apache. He's going to do his civilian defender class, which is really talking about, spray, OC sprays, chemical sprays, things like that, and their proper use and their deployment and kind of some scenario type stuff. It is very possible that one of our guys is going to be voluntold to be sprayed. Be
I heard it's going to be you,
willing victim. That's what I keep being told. I have not committed 100% to that yet or not.
So real quick, Dan Brady actually reached out to Craig about utilizing a small fragment of muck, managing unknown contacts, which was what John Willis was talking about in the last segment. And so Craig has given him his blessing on teaching some of that. So it won't just be about pepper spray, that class alone. There'll be a lot of intermediate force options given to you. But OC is most definitely a great thing to learn. And it's an 8-hour class. And, you don't have to have a gun to come out. You don't have to have any real experience at all. The class is open to everybody. Right. And, as you heard John say a while ago, dude that's been in the training world for probably over 25 years now. If I had Adam Roth here, he could guess his age. I think he guessed his age at like 58 or something.
If Adam Roth was here, Tim has been in it longer than John, and that is not the case.
Thanks, Adam.
All right, so really diving back into it, getting back into it. So our final segment, Zach, of every month is to talk about our competency every week is to talk about our competency of the month. Tim, I'm going to let you grill Zach. I'm tired of being grilled following the competency of the month. So, Zach, Tim,
I don't know.
Tim, what is
That's
the competency of the month? And throw it at Zach.
I really, because Zach doesn't have a computer in front of him, I really want to ask Zach what the competency of the month is, because he never opens the email that he gets every month explaining the competency of the month.
Hang on.
What is it?
Too much dead time. I don't know.
I smell smoke.
He can't do it. He can't
coming
do
out
it.
your
I
ears.
literally read
So-
it like 2 days ago.
So, folks, for those of you that don't know what our competency of the month is, and how it came to be, it started off as an in-house type thing that we did to try and encourage. He's over there.
He's
Googling.
looking at
No,
his
no,
he's trying to go through his
no,
email,
I'm
trying to
talking
find it.
What we did was we put this together every month. We send out a different competency, a different subject that all of us really need to learn and grow in. So we just pick something every month.
Yeah, I remember now.
Something that encourages us to either expand upon a subject that we already know, or learn about something completely new to us.
Like the benefits of.
Because
He's got his finger in my face, by the way.
because we have been doing it in-house, and it works so great because all of our guys open up the email and respond to them, and that type of
Especially
thing.
Zach.
Especially Zach. We decided to share it with everyone else, all of our listeners and our viewers, and kind of open it up to all of you to hope, and in hopes that you will expand upon your knowledge base in this subject as well. So, the competency of the month is, Zach?
I don't remember. It's benefits of scenario-based training.
That's
There
it.
you go.
Explain the benefits of
Explain, my
Yes,
bad.
go ahead.
I got part of it. You want me to do it?
Yes,
right
I
now.
want you- what are the benefits
Okay.
of scenario-based training?
Everything, in my opinion. It is extremely, extremely beneficial. You could run through scenarios in your head all day. I have massive ADD and ADHD, so I overthink everything.
Could not tell.
Yeah, I know.
I have no idea.
And I run scenarios through my head all day, every day. Even just sitting here, I'm running 1-5-25 while I'm talking to you. But scenario-based training actually shows who you are in a different realm. Because wouldn't you want to know what you're capable of, your limitations are, who you are, and what you would do or should do or can't do in a scenario, and not in a real scenario, life-threatening situation or anything like that?
Right, no repercussions.
Yeah. It's so beneficial to where you can learn, okay, I made a massive mistake. I could possibly have spent the rest of my life in prison for this one, or, oh gosh, it's the worst day of my life.
Yeah.
How am I going to handle it? And going through scenario-based training is so important. It's one of the most important for training, in my opinion, because there's all kinds of different scenario-based trainings. It could be OC spray, it could be hands-on, it could be de-escalation, it could be going to the firearm. It's so beneficial because it really teaches you what you should and shouldn't do, and what you're capable of, and who you are as a person.
Right.
So,
I think one of the things I like about, I still hate, I created this. I created Explain the Benefits of Scenario-Based Training. I cannot tell you how much I do not like the term scenario-based training. It drives me up the wall. That's the same as like reality-based training. But sometimes that's the only way people understand what I'm trying to,
Do better, Tim.
I know. But there are a lot of good places to receive different scenario-based training. There's a lot of bad places to receive it. One of the things that we try to do in some of our small segments of scenario-based training, if you will, is try to get to know the student, number one, build up some type of personal profile with them throughout the weekend.
100%.
And then when we finally do introduce them to whatever reality-based training they're in, it's something that they are that kind of hits home. It triggers emotion. There's something that ties them personally to that scenario. And that's not something we just created on our own. That's stuff that we learned from the professionals, right?
Yeah,
That's stuff that we've taken from some of the geniuses like Craig Douglas or even Phil Groff and some of the others. But there is something to be said about developing some type of personal relationship with a student and then interacting with them in a scenario and getting them to like trigger some type of response, right? We're really going for is an emotional response, right? And see how well they handle that emotion,
right?
Because that's where things really start to fall apart.
Yeah, if you can evoke some sort of like guttural, instant reaction, right? That is the best way of really like catching somebody off guard. I mean, nobody's going to expect you to do or for you to say what you're going to do or say to try and invoke the student to try and get them to have that reaction. And it's better for the student. It's better for you to handle that now in a safe, controlled, constructive environment than in the streets, right? Or wherever you're out in the wild, out in the public.
Yeah. And from our perspective, you'd be surprised at what you see and what you learn, from different people. We in every one of these defensive handgun classes that we teach, like our defensive handgun 2-day especially. We try to get the students to write out a mission statement. Like, what is your mission? What is the whole purpose of this? Is it just coming home alive? Like, what does that all entail? And by the end of the class, they have filled out something completely different. They have completely changed their entire mission, right? Because once they've been put in those different scenarios, everything changes. Yeah. Not to steal a line from you, Zach.
It does.
Everything changes.
Everything changes.
It really does, man. I mean, you got the guy that says, well, I just see red and this is how I act, right? Well, that's great. If that's the case, let's see how that works out for you, right? And not have to worry about you going to prison for that, right? Or you have the person that's just absolutely terrified. Okay, that's all right. Let's see how that works out for you. Yeah. Right. And then now you can make the decision moving forward. Is this the way I want to respond to a situation like this? Is this the way I want to respond? Does this help me meet my mission? Right. That right there, that is the benefit of scenario-based training, is to be able to do this type of thing without having to worry about the relentless repercussions, right? The relentless consequences of reality.
Yeah, and being, again, as we've said over and over again, and being able to do that in a safe, constructive manner, right? You're not getting hit in the face with this stuff, or you're not being, assaulted or attacked with this stuff, and out in the wild, when that is the first time that you're having to deal with those emotions, or that is the first time you're having to deal with this particular idea, or whatever it is. It's so much better. Quick side story. Had a church thing, and had all these different ladies and stuff like that that's in the course. And the person that was teaching this course had slipped up and used language that they shouldn't use in a church setting. And for a couple of these ladies, they've been around the block. They've heard this kind of stuff. But for one of the other sirs really got offended by it, and then was like, hey man, the use of foul language is not, it's going to happen, right? It's going to happen in the world. It's going to happen when you're out in public. It is what it is, right? You're going to have to deal with this, this assault and this, battery on your earways, regardless of where it's at or what's happening.
And sometimes the first time they ever hear it, they get frozen.
They really do. Yeah. There's a lot that really goes into that. Zach, thank you so much for joining us for the Responsibly Citizen Show. Tim, as always, good to see you guys. We look forward to talking to everybody next week. Look forward to hearing you guys. So stay safe. Reach out to us if you want us, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Go out and train.
Go out and train.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.